Hey, so we're back for another episode of the podcast. I'm happy because today I got a very special guest, the one and only Lisa Barnes.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. No,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for being down to jump on the podcast and talk about some fun, good, important topics.
Yeah.
So in this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking a lot about uniqueness, individuality, finding a place in the church, belonging versus fitting in, and really just I think the overall goal is to maybe create have some guidelines and maybe some for those that are involved in church ministry, maybe like a couple set of tools to be able to make your church a little bit more inviting to people on the outside, people on the outskirts. Yeah.
No, that sounds great.
Yeah, we're talking about that. I think we're talking about a little bit about like this idea of like others, but not like in the others over self, but sometimes we have this human aspect to us where people that don't agree with us are either ideologically, theologically, politically, whatever, different from us. We tend to kind of push them off to the side.
Yeah. You're out.
You're out. Yeah, you're the other group. You're those people type of situation. So talk a little bit about that. And just overall, I know it's going to be a really good conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So really quick, I just want to know, like, for people that don't know you, like, can you share a little bit about yourself, about maybe your life, your testimony, or something? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lisa. I've been an officer for 15 years, but I've been part of the Salvation Army consistently since I was 14. But my first experience with the Army was when I was 11 at Camp Karatli in Oregon. I lived in Portland, and I went to community service camp for all the kids that were a part of like the social ministry. I accepted Jesus in the top bunk of my bed in my cabin, and I have loved Jesus every day since. When I was about 14, I became part of the Salvation Army church community. When there's a woman named Grandma Jean. I don't think her first name was Grandma. Everybody called her Grandma Jean.
Grandma Jean, yeah.
And I don't even know if she was anyone's grandma in real life,
but
that's what we called her. And she came to my house to drop a food box off because she knew my mom would come any chance she could for social service help, food box, rental assistance, whatever. But at this season, my mom was super deep in her addiction. So she hadn't gone to the Army for a long time. And Grandma Jean knew that even if Margaret was sick, she had a daughter who might need some help. So Grandma Jean brought a food box to our house, and we were both surprised to see her, but I invited her in, and she came and sat and talked with my mom, who, it was rough. My mom was an addict and a prostitute, the neighborhood dealer, a hoarder, a bunch of things. And it was really interesting for me at that time as 14-year-old Lisa to see somebody interacting with my mom with just kindness, not really seeking anything. Everyone else who really interacted with my mom at all wanted something.
Yeah.
So it was really a beautiful thing. And Grandma Jean was with us for, I don't know, maybe close to an hour. And as she was leaving, I was walking her towards the door. And as the door was shutting, she put her hand on the door and she's like, "Hey, Lisa, do you think you'd want to come to youth group?" And Paco, I remember my first thought being like of total fear. Thinking, how can I go to a place and be with people on a regular basis? What if they find out? What if they find out who my mom is, or that we live in the hood, or what she does, any of these things? And what will they think of me then? And more than I was afraid, I just wanted to belong. So I told Grandma Jean, I think I might want to come. And then right before the door shut, she's like, "Great, the van will be here at 5 o'clock on Friday to pick you up."
Yeah.
And then 5 o'clock on Friday, I heard the horn from the 15-passenger van outside. Back in the day, RIP 15-passenger vans. And it was a youth group. I went with them in this strange van with strange people that I'd never met, with no permission slip and no PTM.
Right.
And it was amazing. And I went for a long time because I belonged. And I was afraid that they would find out who my mom was and all of those things, and they did find out. They did find out, but that didn't change at all how they cared for me and how they loved me. My mom was an atheist, and so I was trained from as early as I can remember when I was with her that we were not Christians. We didn't believe in God. We didn't believe in Jesus. A lot of times, like, those people will help poor people, so we'll pretend as long as we can to get what we need. So we, went to the Mormon church, went to the Salvation Army, went to the Baptist, Catholics, whatever we could.
Right.
So I was a part of youth group at the Salvation Army, really actively fighting against believing in Jesus. And then one day I just couldn't, I couldn't. And something I believed as absolute truth was that I was unlovable, because that was a lot easier to stomach than thinking my mom was choosing drugs over loving me. So I made it about me, and I was unlovable. I was too hard to love. No one could. So I would do things on a regular basis to affirm that truth. Like, I was really mean.
Yeah.
And I was a bully, and I would break things, or I would steal things, or other things that I don't want to admit publicly.
For sure.
Yeah. But no matter what I did, my youth leader, who was Lori Davis, who was the youth leader at Gresham for over 20 years.
Yeah, shout out to her.
Big shout out.
Yeah.
I knew that no matter what I did, Lori loved me. And so I remember thinking, man, if Lori really loves me, maybe Jesus can love me. And that's what did it for me. And because they didn't wait to love me until I fully conformed and got a uniform and acted just like them, it made my faith so real when I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And that was really my foundation of faith. And I'm glad I had that, because I grew up in foster care, probably between 30 or 40 different homes to the best of my knowledge. And even after I accepted Jesus, I was still in foster care. So it's definitely not the magic bullet that relieves all suffering. But the time in care felt different after I was in care with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think a couple thoughts come to mind. So I was a youth worker for about 5 years, and working in the inner city, working in Long Beach, and I will say that's one of the things that whenever I think about the Salvation Army, and the people that we, some of the people that we employ, and those people, like, the Salvation Army is always in, like, the roughest parts, the roughest parts of the neighborhood. I remember, getting in the same thing, for us, it was the 25 passenger, little small bus. And we'd go out through the streets of, like, these jam packed streets, of the city, and just start, honking and picking up kids. And, Adrian as well, he'd be the guy there with me on the bus, and I'd just be driving through, and,
picking up all these baby kids.
100%. Yeah. I'm like, we would go, and I'm telling you, there's people there that are kids there that we'd never see the parents. No idea who their parents were. I couldn't, if you gave me a lineup of 6 people, I couldn't tell you who the mom was, who the dad was, but those kids would come, I would just hand over a permission slip, because this was our PTM days.
Yeah.
Here's a permission slip. Tell your mom or whoever, your grandma, to sign it. I'll come back next week. And once it's there, then we're going to go ahead and, start bringing you up, bring you in. And sure enough, like, we'd get a ton of kids all the time. And, in the roughest, in the roughest parts of the neighborhood, places where there was, like, huge and great need. And I feel like that's always been, like, kind of like our heart as a organization, but really, like, as people too, just to be there for those are, like, the most, like, downtrodden.
Yeah. We always kind of make jokes in our house that the shield is almost like the bat signal. It goes out and it's like, we're here, like, for our people, like, come and find us, right?
Right.
And a lot of times that signal attracts people that maybe don't necessarily fit other places.
Right.
Maybe people that are struggling with addiction, or maybe mental illness, poverty, or even just generally feeling like you have a place, like, you have a place with us, and that's, like, our bat signal. Like, the shield is like, you come, you're welcome here.
Right. 100%. Yeah. I would say, like, it's like we have this ability to attract, and I say this, like, in the good sense of the word, like, all the weirdos.
Yeah.
All the kids and the people that don't fit in, like, that's our people, that's our community. That's who we're there to kind of serve with,
Homie, let me tell you, when I was, probably about 12, I went to this other church that was not Salvation Army. And everybody there was, like, the same. Like, blonde, skinny, cute, quiet, 2 parents, good manners. And then there was me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in this youth group with a bunch of girls, and it was like a bootleg Mary Kay party. And they had all this makeup kit, and then we're all behind these dividers. And we were doing this makeup, and we're like, okay, on the count of 3, we're going to reveal the makeup. And we did it, and I just went to town. put every color possible on my face. I had blue eyeshadow from my lashes to my eyebrow, purple blush, orange on my lips. And I'm like, I won, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no way they look better than me.
Yeah.
And I put the divider down when we counted to 3, and literally every other girl had like beige eyeshadow, clear lip gloss, maybe like the lightest pink blush. And then there's me wearing like, I'm like the queen of the circus.
Yeah.
And it instantly wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed. And I remember right then thinking, you will never have a place here. You will never fit in here. You will never be one of them. And that was the last youth group I ever went to at that church.
Yeah.
Fast forward to a few months later when I start going to the Salvation Army, I get there and it's like metaphorically, everybody's wearing that clown makeup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For
I'm
sure.
like, these are my people. Not because they're all like me, but we all get to be whatever we are,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is it. This is my place.
Yeah. People are just like accepted, loved,
Yeah.
brought in.
Yep.
Going back to what you were talking about, so like you were saying, like you started coming to the Army. You had been in multiple, innumerable amount of foster homes.
Yeah.
Was the Army still going and showing up and finding you, locating you, and just going and picking you up?
Yeah, yeah. I remember once the very last group home I was in, most of my placements were group homes as opposed to like family homes, like proper foster homes, because
Yeah.
I was naughty and I had a history of violence and fighting. So not every family would take me. So I spent a lot of time in group homes. And I remember the last group home I was in, my mom and I got into a fist fight. And once we were done, like physically fighting for hours, she took my backpack, threw it outside, and says, "Get out! I don't want you anymore." The cops came, picked me up, went to go talk to my mom because I think they thought I was lying, that I was just trying to run away. So when he confirmed that this is legit, my mom really said that. He took me to a group home. By the time I get settled in my room, it's probably like 2:00 in the morning, and this was a Friday night. And I remember thinking, "Oh shoot, the van's going to be there to get me on Sunday. I have to let him know." And so I was on lockdown, so I couldn't leave my room. Like I physically could not open the door. It was locked.
Yeah.
But I had a window. I was on the second floor. And from the window was like a garden lattice, where like pea tendrils can curl on.
Yeah.
And this is how I know the Holy Spirit was with me, because I was never small. And I decided I could climb on that.
Yeah.
And I sure did open my window from the second story
Yeah.
and fully climb down my big self down this garden lattice. And I went to the payphone and I called collect the Corps. And when I called collect, there was a section where it said, "Say your name after the beep." And after the beep, I said, "Hey, it's Lisa. I'm not going to be there on Sunday. Don't pick me up. I'm in foster care. Bye."
Wow.
Like
yeah.
as fast as I could,
Yeah.
right? And then I remember the folks at the Corps, when they got the message, they didn't pick me up, but they spent the entire Sunday praying for me. There wasn't worship. There wasn't a message. It was literally an entire Sunday
Wow.
of the entire congregation dedicated to praying for me.
Yeah.
And then I sure did, after I make that collect call, climb back up the garden lattice and went back into that room and went to sleep and, spent my weekend in that home.
Yeah.
But even though they knew, like, they would come, if I could tell them where I was, they would come and get me or stand in the gap for me some way. Yeah.
Man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. That's one thing that I think, I think as we've talked a lot about, I'm sure plenty of us, us that are within the church, like we always, tend to or it's too easy to look at the church like with a critical eye.
Yeah.
And kind of be like, hey, the church, like it did me, whatever wrong, or like I disagree with this, or something, didn't go right, and we feel some sort of way about it. Maybe we take offense with what happened, and it can be so easy to be so negative, about it, when you're in it. And sometimes, man, you just need some perspective. You need to like take a step out and really look at the fullness of what the church is, what its mission is, and the way that it serves and it helps people, and how it actually is a good place. It's a place full of people that have their own, whatever you want to say, weaknesses, maybe some character flaws, this and that, but it's a good place.
Yeah.
It's a safe place.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that that's stuck with me and really just more as of recently, because there was sometimes there where like, maybe I felt some sort of way about it, based off of, experiences, with different individuals, different people. But one thing that I was reminded of is that the church is like, it's instituted by God.
Yeah.
It's not instituted by people.
Yeah.
Right. So like if it's instituted by God, then it's a good thing. Right. So we have to have like that kind of perspective that, this is a good
Yeah.
thing.
You know, I think I might challenge that a scotch.
Go for it. Go for it.
And my challenge might be that I believe because it was created by God, it has the capacity to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always a good thing
Mm-hmm.
because it's still full of people.
Right.
And we can pretty easily and quickly screw up something beautiful. And so I think my challenge is having the mindset of not it is a good thing, but it could be a good thing.
Mm.
It has what it needs to be a good thing, but we got to be on board with that. And I think sometimes if you are part of a faith community, whether it's the Army or not, and it doesn't feel like a good thing, I don't want to trivialize that and say that's not real, because it could very well be a great descriptor of what that environment is like.
Correct.
It might be unhealthy.
Correct.
It might be painful. It might have, spiritual abuse in some capacity connected to that. So I think it absolutely can be a good thing, but we have to weigh the fruit, right? We have to weigh the fruit of this faith community and say, is it a good thing? Like, are these people are kind?
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel loved and supported here?
Mm-hmm.
And if not, that doesn't necessarily mean you bounce. I think sometimes you bounce if it's just beyond repair, right? Because you shouldn't stay somewhere that's sick and painful.
Right.
But I do think we need to evaluate, can we be better? What can we do as a faith community to be what God intended us to be if we're not there? Mm-hmm. I'm very, very blessed that I've been a part of faith communities, both when I was a very young new Christian and then as an officer, that were like heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if it's not, let's acknowledge that.
Right.
And then have the courage to kind of ask ourselves, man, this thing isn't great. And not in any way to just, victim shame or take on what's not ours. But if it's not great, what can I do to make it better? And maybe, if you're brave enough, what have I done to be part of the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we're okay with asking those real, honest, hard questions, that's when you get to heaven on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that last question is the biggest one. I think that it's too easy to point the blame at somebody else instead of taking the hard look at ourselves, for sure. So maybe we can say, how about this? The concept of the church is a good thing, like a God thing.
Yeah.
It's all of us, his children. We're the ones that are always,
we muck it up.
Yeah, we mess it up. Yeah. We do some stuff. Yeah.
Just as we have the capacity to mess it up, we have the capacity to bring healing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, and we also have the capacity to bring about the redemptive aspect of it.
Absolutely.
And I think that is something that, as you kind of were talking about a bit, there are places and let's say communities that are troublesome, that do have red flags, where like you said, there are unhealthy places and places that maybe people should avoid or reconsider their involvement there. However, the church, us, the community, we have an ability to in a sense, bring about some redemption, and be able to come together and bring a better image of what the church is, or what God has kind of called us to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So really quick, how did you end up becoming a pastor? Can you break that one down for me?
So I knew when I was as soon as I said yes to Jesus for real, I knew this is all I wanted with my life. So I knew when I was 14, I was called to officership specifically. And all I wanted was to be with our people. And not just the nice people, the people that are easier to love, but the full capacity of our people as the Salvation Army. And so there were a few other things I tried when I thought, because I really think if you're going to be an officer, go in with the intention of thinking, I could do this for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean God can't call you out or do something different, but I don't think we should go in with the intention of this being just a for now opportunity. So I went in thinking, okay, if this might not, what else could I do maybe, just to be sure this is for me. Mm-hmm. And so I went to school to be a teacher. I thought I would love to be a second grade teacher, because that's when they're bonkers, but they can totally go to the bathroom on their own. So I'm like, that's pretty good,
that's
right?
a big win, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's how I made that decision.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, that'd be cool, but maybe I could be a tattoo artist. And so I did a year-long tattoo apprenticeship, which was kind of funny because it ended on the day I was going to tattoo my first person.
Yeah.
And the guy came in and he's like, I want you to tattoo the word pagan on the back of my neck. And I said, yeah, dope, I'll do it.
Yeah.
It's my first one. He didn't care.
Yeah.
So he left, and I was sketching out the word pagan over in different sizes, different fonts.
Yeah.
And the more I did it, like the yuckier I felt in my spirit. Because I fully love the Lord at this point, right? And so I told the guy I was apprenticing, I don't think I can do this. And he said, you know, if you only do tattoos that are in line with your personal beliefs, you're going to get the reputation of being a bigot, and you're not going to get any business. And so I shook his hand and I said, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
And I think the Lord knew, don't even let her tattoo one person.
Yeah.
Because that's it. She'll love it, and that's
she'll
all
get
she'll want to
hooked.
do. Yep.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then I just thought, you know, I could do all the things I love while being an officer. I can teach kids. I can do art, you know, maybe not tattooing a person, but I've done like henna parties when I was a DYS at camp, and teaching kids how to paint and color theory, and how to write and do fun stuff and just live your life. And officership, being a pastor, and officership specifically, is so multifaceted that you don't just have to be one way. You can be fully yourself, in everything that you're passionate about. You can find a place for within this mission, and have the freedom to operate in your passion.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably my favorite part of being an officer is, contrary to popular opinion, I feel like I have total freedom. I think that sometimes people take on the very skewed belief that it's so controlled and we're very, you know, automated. And I've never felt that. I've never had that experience. I've always been able to do the things that fill my cup, even if they're different, or I'm the only one, or I'm the first, and been able to have that freedom in ministry.
Okay, that kind of makes me think about something. Do you think that's part of like, okay, so like the reality of the system, actually there is a lot more flexibility, or do you think that's more of like your individual personality, where you're the type that's like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm gonna make it as flexible as I want to. You know, I'm gonna bend this
you know,
thing. You
good
know,
point,
forward
brother.
and backwards.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think it's probably a mix of both.
Okay.
But I'm definitely not a people pleaser. And so I don't ever do anything because I'm like, oh, I think my leaders will like it if I do this, or someone will be proud of me if I do this, or I'll have someone's approval. And I know, and not to like shame people that have those thoughts, because that's a super normal part of our existence as humans, right? But for me, I had to, the way that I grew up, I couldn't depend on anyone's approval.
Right.
I wouldn't have survived.
Right.
And so I, like, on the love language, you know, the 5 love languages, words of affirmation for me are very bottom. Because I don't need you to tell me good job for me to know I did a good job.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, Paco. I think my personality being kind of more of a free spirit, and more a higher priority for me is knowing that the Lord is proud of me and I'm doing kingdom work God's way.
Yeah.
Than if I'm doing it like everybody else.
Right.
So I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. So maybe like like you're saying, just a bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to do it, right? Sometimes you have to just say, man, God's really put this on my heart to do this thing. I'm going to give it a go and then see what happens, right? Because if it's in line with mission, and if you can figure out the budget, the sky's the limit.
Right.
But I think sometimes we wait. We wait for leaders or people at headquarters or THQ, whatever, to say, you know what, Lisa, I think you could do something great for kids in foster care. When we've been passionate about that, but they don't know. So we're just sitting on our hands waiting for them to tell us we can do a good thing, when you can just do the good thing.
Right.
And then once you start, it kind of snowballs, right?
Yeah.
And you say, oh, I can also do this, or I have the freedom to do this. And then you grow from there. But sometimes you just have to start.
Just got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's funny you say that, because I do feel like when I think about like the Salvation Army, and I think about like, what is it that we do? You know, I can kind of pinpoint to you some of the things that everybody knows. You know, we do social services. You know, we hand out food boxes. We help people with their rent. You know, all of the classic things that the organization is known for. But there are some people out there that are doing some crazy ministries that there's, like you said, that freedom. It's like, to me, the way that I've seen it is like, if you're passionate about something, you have the ability, the flexibility to do it. You know, one of the ones that kind of comes to mind, at least right now, is for a while we were doing here like sweet prayers, which is basically going out to massage parlors essentially and dropping off like, cookies and treats to the women that are there, knowing that there's a percentage, probably like a large percentage, that are there, you know, as a result of like, you know, human trafficking or forced labor, right? And that's something that, you know, somebody just felt passionate about trying to address and trying to seeing that need and just straight up going for it. And that it kind of brings me back like kind of full circle to what we're talking about, like the whole idea of like individuality, uniqueness, what you uniquely are like gifted towards, how God has uniquely crafted you, made you, wired you, and essentially like trying to push people, encourage people to walk in that freedom, because there's like a real freedom in that.
Yeah, super freedom. And I think it's beautiful, but it's also scary,
Yeah.
It's scary when you live your life as a person of freedom because not everybody does. And I think sometimes there's people who take a lot of comfort, especially folks within the Salvation Army as officers that have taken a lot of comfort from the safety that comes with conformity. It's the easier route. And I think there's comfort in what's easy and what's familiar. And a lot of times I have had the experience that my freedom is offensive to some people that have found their comfort in the conformity. And it's not necessarily that my freedom is not of the Lord. It's just something that they didn't think was possible for them. And so they think, why is it possible for you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of have to have a stronger back in some ways to know that when my freedom in Christ is offensive to some people, that's actually not about me at all. And pray that God helps them see what's real and that they can also be free, even if their freedom looks completely different to what my freedom looks like.
Right.
That's on purpose.
Right.
We're not all meant to be the same.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's big facts. In your time as a pastor and building community and shepherding people, have you found it difficult at moments to get people to embrace their uniqueness, like their unique giftings? Is that something that you feel like people are? Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe it's like just part of like you kind of said. There's like a certain way to ascend by following the laid out path, and it's safe and it could be easy. It's you know what I mean, making the right connections with certain people or whatever. But just in general, like I said, shepherding people and young adults, like have you found that to be like a difficult thing to get people to just like be like, dude, just accept who God has made you. You're uniquely gifted where you're at. You have the ability, to grow in your giftings and your talents. Is that something that you ever feel like any people are like kind of, try to push back on that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of times if there is pushback, it's not intentional. I think that a lot of times as pastors in this movement, we are kind of like everything is meant to be in some ways kind of copy paste. Like, this is how you do troops. This is where you get all the information for youth ministry. Just take it and then instantly download it into your location.
Right.
This is what Home League Women's Ministries looks like. Take the full program online, take it, press, plug it into your location, which doesn't necessarily require any kind of individuality or personal giftedness. It's plug and play.
Yeah.
And in some ways that can be great and really helpful, especially if you're busy. But I think it also robs us of the opportunity to figure out what our passions are, to figure out what we're good at, instead of having just something handed to us that we could preach the Easter message that was delivered to our inbox.
Right.
Because that was a helpful, easy resource. And I'm not saying don't give us helpful, easy resources. I'm just saying it's okay to do the hard thing to figure out your giftedness.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we can talk about the difference between fitting in and belonging, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we're given a lot of things that's very plug and play, so we can fit in and we can be like everybody else, and your core can look like my core and your ministry can look like my ministry, and then we can open this new core and then plug and play. It's set, it's looking like everybody else, even if it's brand new.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people say, I just want to fit in. And so our system is set up for fitting in. But I believe it's really misconstrued. And I actually don't think anybody wants to fit in. I think what people really want is to belong. And there's a quote from Brene Brown. I'm not sure if this was in one of her books or from a video, but that's the problem when you've read all of someone's books. I'm like, I don't know. One of her 6 books I read is from one of them. But she talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And she says, fitting in is one of the greatest barriers to belonging. I just got to sit on that. Fitting in is one of the greatest barriers to belonging. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are.
Yeah.
And I just love that, because I think we have a system, we have a culture in some ways in the Salvation Army that has said, you have to be just like us. We'll even give you an outfit that you can wear every day for the rest of your life.
Right.
We're not created to wear the same outfit, and I'm not dogging on the uniform.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, we're not created to wear the same outfit, right? And I think because we have it so set up to fit in and to conform in some ways and to be like everyone else, really for great reasons, with the intention of being a servant above anything else. I get it. It has great roots. It has great foundation. But it also should make some room for us to be something else in God's economy, right? And so I think we say we want to fit in, but really we just want to belong. And the big difference is you don't have to look just like me.
Right.
You can be fully who you are. You don't have to earn your space.
Right.
You can come to the room and before you have shown us how good and faithful and strong and worthy you are, we'll make space for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to earn your space.
Right.
You just get it because you are a child of God and he's given it to you.
Yeah.
So we get to reciprocate that. And that's it. Period. End. And then God does the rest. But I think sometimes we expect people to be just like us before we give them a seat at the table. And I'm so thankful that was not my experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like this thing where, thinking about whether it's like programs like you're kind of mentioning or, certain, different things. They don't work in every context.
Right.
And they're not, then they shouldn't. And they're not supposed to work in every context. As a youth worker, you know what I mean? Like I knew that me giving a child a piece of musical equipment, a specific type of piece of musical equipment, wasn't going to work with these inner city kids. Plain and simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, dude, if you're walking around with a cornet, you're gonna get beat up at school. You know, plain and simple. You know what I mean? That's it, and it just doesn't work in that context. So it isn't cookie cutter. Yeah, I think by creating the cookie cutter, you're robbing, people. Sometimes you're robbing people of their own ability to impact their own community or their own kind of circle of influence.
Or even just to meet people right where they are. Like, I think we need to take more consideration into taking what we're given, the resources that we're given within the Salvation Army, and saying, this is fundamentally a very good resource, but we're trying to round peg square hole this, right? Like, it's not a good fit. How do we adjust this great resource to be a good fit? For example, in places where I've been a Corps officer in the hood, specifically I think of Seattle, we had an after-school program with over 60 kids in it, and we decided we were going to start doing troops. And then I realized quickly, as I was leading Sunbeams, that over half my girls in my Sunbeam troop were functioning illiterate. And so chronologically, they were in 3rd and 4th grade.
Right.
But academically, they were maybe kindergarten. Troops comes with material that they have to fill out. And if you want to be a Commissioner Sunbeam, you better do your homework. You better keep it in that binder. You better be able to wear your uniform perfect with no nail polish or earrings, be able to salute, say the pledge, so that you can become a Commissioner Sunbeam.
Yeah.
If you can't do those things, there's no space for you.
Yeah.
I decided I was going to take that great resource and I was just going to tweak it a little bit. I was going to use the material. So they were going to do all the badge requirements, but they weren't going to fill out any paperwork because they could not.
Yeah.
So was I going to alienate these beautiful kids, these beautiful examples of God's creation from being a part of the Salvation Army movement because they couldn't write? Like, that's shady. And I think leadership would green light that. They would say, yeah, just do it. Like, teach them about the Lord, teach them bird study, get them in your building, get them saved, like, do whatever it takes. But we get so locked in this fixed mindset that we say this opportunity is just a challenge and we can't do it. And so I knew none of my kids would be Commissioner Sunbeams. But so what? Do they know Jesus? Do they know that they're loved and accepted in this space? Do they know that there's place for them? Do they know that they belong? Come on. Right. And then I kind of cheated when I was a DYS. Whenever I did Commissioner Sunbeams, I did never look at the book. If a girl came to me and she was trying, I said, guess what, homegirl? You've already won.
You've done it. Yeah.
You're already here. You
Right.
already have it. Tell me why you love it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think, we have kids that know that there's space for them, no matter what, no matter, their areas of deficiency or challenges. That doesn't preclude you from being part of God's kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm taking a really quick break from this episode just to remind you that if you're enjoying this conversation or any of the other conversations that we've had on this podcast, to go ahead and give us a share, like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and pass it along to the people you know will be able to benefit and will enjoy this. Also, I want to remind you that you can follow us across all social platforms at SoCal Division. That's at SoCal Division. There you'll be able to find a lot of really good content, so be sure to give us a follow. All right, back to the episode. Okay, so talking about that, are there any ways or what are some ways that a person can kind of do some self-inventory? So this is even going back to even further what we were saying. Sometimes it starts with looking in the mirror, and just kind of seeing what are my attitudes, what are my motives, how or why am I operating the way that I'm doing? But are there any ways that a person can, or questions a person can kind of ask themselves to find out if they're creating an environment where they're allowing people to belong, or if they're essentially making people trying to get people to fit into this system?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think maybe just evaluating why am I doing this, and don't be afraid of the why. And sometimes you'll have to go deeper. If you're the core officer and things that you are trying aren't working, being okay with asking yourself, well, why is this not working? And not just pointing the finger at your people, but maybe what am I doing? What are my motivations? Why do I want this? Who am I trying to please? Do I have any bias against these people? Do I have a preconceived idea that some of these people are worth more than other of these people? And being willing to really ask the hard questions that will probably need to come with repentance, but so much good after. And I think that is hard. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that to do that kind of work is hard, but so good.
Right. It's redemptive work. It's kingdom work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm a big fan. Hopefully this won't get me excommunicated. But I'm a big fan of the Enneagram. I think whatever we can do to know more about who the people are that God has brought into our sphere of influence. What do they need? How do they best receive communication? What fills their tank? What do they really struggle with? We talk about the golden rule, which is treat people how you want to be treated. And that's a pretty common philosophy across most belief systems in some way. But I think there's something better than the golden rule, which is called the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is to treat people the way that they want to be treated. Because we don't all want to be treated the same. But to do that effectively, you have to know your people.
You have to know them, right?
Right? I'm a raging extrovert. I had to do this inventory a few months ago, and out of 100, I was 93, 98 on the extroversion scale.
Yeah.
It's pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
So if you call on me in a group setting, no problem, I got it. If you hand me a microphone and say, hey, Lisa, can you pray real quick? Yeah, no problem, I got it. If there's a new person here, can you go talk to him? Absolutely, I got it.
Yeah.
Not everybody's like that.
Right.
So we have to know our people.
Right.
There's some people where you might hand them a microphone and ask them to pray, and it just puts the fear of the scariest thing in the world through their body.
Right, yeah.
But you should know that about your people. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't push people to do things that are hard, because that's important. But we have to treat people the way that they want to be treated. You got to know them to do that.
Right. For sure, 100%. Just continue on with this conversation. So we talked about bias, and that's something that I think that's just human across the board. We all have different forms of biases, and we make generalizations, and some of those can be bad. Some of those can be good. It's a way of understanding the world, right? So sometimes we create generalizations. as a way of processing information and trying to arrive at a conclusion or a decision as fast as we possibly can. For expediency, we may not have the ability or the time to be able to look at every single detail of a situation or a scenario, but we have these things where we generally can make decisions faster, assumptions faster. So there is a positive kind of like aspect, to that. But as we're talking about like those people, and it's quote unquote those people, we all have in our own lives a set of those people, right? People that we maybe don't associate with, people like I said earlier, like people that we maybe have theological differences with, political differences, especially right now. We're going to definitely see a lot more of that, especially right now, 2024, a new like political season. We're going to, like, unfortunately, it's very divisive, but what are some ways that we can identify those people, quote unquote, in our lives? Because the ultimate goal is, I think it's for us, and it's biblical, but for us to be operating in unity.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean agreement.
Absolutely.
Because we may not agree on everything, but we are called to be united. So what are some ways that we can kind of identify, quote unquote, those people?
Yeah, no, good question. I think probably the first step in identifying is when you realize that maybe you're not giving somebody a chance.
Okay.
Like, why am I not giving them a chance? Like, why am I instantly of the opinion that they are wrong, or that they don't know, or that they don't have a place here, right? Good example, when COVID first started, my daughter was second grade. And I remember back when COVID started, we all kind of thought in the very beginning that it was only going to affect senior citizens. And so a lot of the conversation in our house was around seniors that are passing away and retirement homes and things like that. And so my daughter developed a bias towards senior citizens. She developed a bias that old people are not safe because they could be sick and you could get it. And I don't even think she, as a sixth grader now, which I even talked to her this morning about this bias because she said she didn't think old people should be allowed to drive. And I said, if they can still drive and they don't have a medical condition, they should be able to drive.
Sure.
Lola.
Yeah.
But she has a very clear bias. And I'm lucky enough to know the origin of that bias as her mom. She doesn't know. Right? And so I think kind of just when we have a feeling or reaction that maybe seems like it's not based in fact or reason of the situation we're talking about, we should say, wait a second, what is it in me? What is it in me that makes me not give this person a chance?
Right.
Or to think already I know what I don't know, right? What do I not know about this? And I think too, probably the unpopular opinion is almost all of us have some type of group of people that we have some pretty intense preconceived notions about. And I think a lot of people that who I would consider my people, like millennial weirdos are my people, tattooed people, stretched ears people. Sometimes we think because we're weird or we're different or we are not necessarily mainstream that we're above that. And we all, if we're honest, have some group of people that we don't give the same space to. And I think we just need to be honest. And take time to identify and to do the work. Like, man, I'm just not in a good place with these people. And your group of those people might not be the poor people or the brown people or the weird people.
Yeah.
You might have a whole other group of people that you think are on the outs. And God says nobody gets to be on the outs. And sometimes we just have to say, do we make space for everyone to belong? Even the people that we call those people? That's the real question, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think, like, I wrote, what you said, which is asking yourself, like, why have I written these people off? To me, the way that I view it, because internally my own self is sometimes like, why do I, it's a personal kind of assessment, but why do I feel that way, about this or a situation? Do I feel threatened in some sort of way? Is there something from my past that's caused me some type of hurt, that's forced me to have a certain perspective on, the others? And it really does take, I think, some like serious soul searching to kind of identify those things. And like when you, at least for me, when I see that I'm leaning towards that way, maybe I can say the word spiraling or going down that path,
Yeah.
being able to remind myself, hey, we've been down this path before.
Yes.
It's wrong. You know it's wrong. You know that what you're thinking or the way that you're processing is incorrect. It's because of that one thing
Yeah.
that you're still dealing with. That one time somebody says something to you that you didn't like, or that thing where you feel threatened
Yeah.
by this group of, a person, individual, or whatever. It's part of like that hard work of like knowing yourself and being able to kind of put an end to that, right?
Yeah.
Also having like the courage and the strength to actually be like, yeah, I'm not going to allow myself to do that. I think there's a real, like, if you're able to do that, that's like real courage.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think when we do the hard work, you made a really good point. When you've done it, you don't necessarily have to do that heavy of a lift all the time. You just remember that you did the hard work.
Yeah.
Right? And you can, like what you said, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to go down that path. And that psalm that says, search me, and if there's any offensive way in me, God, help me, fix it.
Yeah.
What do I need to call out of my heart? And humble ourselves to know that God is still working on us.
Yeah.
If you don't think God is still working on you, you got a whole lot of things twisted up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're like a mega project.
Yeah, come
For
on.
sure, yeah, because that's ultimately a ton of pride there.
Yeah.
Right, for sure.
And fear. I think a lot of fear.
Yeah.
If I really let God work on me, what will he find?
I think some people also have a fear of what they think they will look like. Because we have an image, or oftentimes we see an image of what a quote unquote holy person looks like.
Yeah.
And sometimes they may or may not be, but the image of what that looks like maybe necessarily isn't, it might be a little off-putting.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because I've met plenty of people that are like quote unquote very spiritual people, but they have like, it sounds so weird, but they have like no human element. You know what I mean? And like they're just not like Jesus being the Son of God. You know what I mean? Like he wept with people. He even to the point of experiencing trouble, experiencing heartache, asking God, take this cup from me. Like he was fully God and fully man.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people that are quote unquote the most holiest or the most spiritual people, it's all like spirituality and there's no like humanness to it.
All piety, no realism, right?
Yeah.
I think about cores that I've been a part of where people are brand new to the Lord and the altar is the spot. When there are people, maybe when we were in Vegas, we had a beautiful relationship with the ARC and they came every Sunday. And every Sunday the altars were lined, and it wasn't just because the preaching was phenomenal. I mean, it was good. But it was because these people, Jesus is so new and fresh, and when we talk about renew within me the spirit of like when I first met Jesus, right? Renew in me that freshness. They have that freshness, and I describe it as almost like you could still smell the fire, the smoke of hell on their clothes,
Yeah.
And so they would run to Jesus.
Yeah.
They would run to the altar. They were not afraid to say, "Whoa, I'm struggling with this and this and this and this. Lord, help me." When I've been part of congregations with people that maybe just have loved Jesus for a long time, the altar isn't necessarily that same kind of, doesn't have that same magnetic appeal. And that breaks my heart. Because I think what you mentioned of them kind of being afraid of the appearance, afraid to do the hard work, what will people think? They won't even take the first step to go to the altar. Because what are people going to think if I'm in a room full of other officers at this church and I go to the altar? That's such a bummer. I want to be a part of a congregation that's going to run to Jesus. No matter what outfit you have on, no matter how long you've loved Jesus. Run. He ran to you. And there's only freedom. And people might think something, but that's not about you.
Right.
That's their own bias.
That's their own, yeah.
And maybe that's their own fear of your freedom. Like what I was mentioning, that they've conformed and they think once we get to this place, we don't do that thing anymore.
Yeah.
But no matter what place you're in, you can run to Jesus.
Right.
Be free in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dope. So you've already given us like a lot. And I'll just ask this question, and maybe it can be to a pastor or just to a normal layperson, that's going to a church. How do we make that welcoming to people? Like, how do we create an environment where people can feel like they belong?
Yeah.
Maybe what are some practical steps? Maybe from the different like positions. Maybe as a pastor, these are some things you can do. Maybe if you're a normal layperson, and if you're a layperson, if you're a person, whoever you are, like these are some things you can do to help make this place a welcoming environment.
Yeah. I really believe there's not too much difference between the pastor and the layperson.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of times the pastor is the one that gets to hold the keys. And then if something goes terribly wrong, it's your responsibility and privilege to help fix it.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're all pretty much same, right?
Right.
Priesthood of all believers.
Right.
So I would say, don't be afraid of going first. If you want to make your spot a welcoming environment, you get to go first. You get to say hello first. You get to shake a hand first. You get to talk to the kids that come in with the single mom first.
Yeah.
Treat people the way that they all deserve to be treated without a bias. And don't wait for them. Don't wait for them to introduce themselves. Be welcoming. Invite them to the table. Go first. You can't ever lose with kindness. You can't ever lose. There's this thing that I would just love to read that kind of speaks to going first and knowing that people don't have to show you they deserve it or they've earned it for you to make space for them. In the Salvation Army, we talk a lot about William Booth's I'll fight speech. As women are going hungry, I'll fight. As people in and out of prisons, I'll fight. Blah, 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 I'll fight, all that stuff. Great. It's good. I'm not anti. But there's something so much better that never gets any play. And this is from a sermon that William Booth gave. And the sermon is called Church for the Poor. And if I could tattoo this across my entire body to remember it every day, I would. And he says this: making heaven on earth is our business. Serve the Lord with gladness is one of our favorite mottos. So am I pleased that you are pleased? But amidst all your joy, don't forget the sons and daughters of misery. Do you ever visit them? Come away and let us make a call or two. Here in a home, 6 in a family, they eat and drink and sleep and sicken and die in the same chamber. Here is a drunkard's hovel, void of furniture, wife a skeleton, children in rags, father maltreating the victims of his neglect. Here are the unemployed, wandering about, seeking work and finding none. Yonder are the wretched criminals, cradled in crime, passing in and out of the prisons all the time. And there are the daughters of shame, diseased and wronged and ruined, traveling down the dark incline to an early grave. There are the children fighting in the gutters, going hungry to school, growing up to fill their parents' places. Brought it all on themselves, you say? Perhaps so, but that does not excuse our assisting them. You don't demand a certificate of virtue before you drag some drowning creature out of the water, nor the assurance that a man has paid his rent before you deliver him from the burning building. But what shall we do? Content ourselves by singing a hymn, offering a prayer, or giving a little good advice? No.
Wow. Yeah.
10,000 times no.
Wow.
We will pity them, feed them, reclaim them, and employ them.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps.
I love it.
Yeah.
We don't demand a certificate of virtue before we decide somebody gets to have a seat at the table.
Right.
That's how you make it welcoming.
Yeah.
That's how you go first. That's how we increase the kingdom of God. That's how we create heaven on earth.
Yeah, that legit gave me goosebumps.
It's so good, right?
It's a straight gut check, just oh man. It's a type of gut check, but it's also like what a call to go out and just love people and serve people and put your own self-interest aside, your own, needs, wants, desires aside. And just like accept and receive people.
Yeah. And it
You know,
even
receive people.
what goes on in it says, towards the end, there's a little more that says, perhaps we will fail with many. That's actually quite likely,
Yeah.
but that doesn't excuse our assisting them. And I think we have to go in with the willingness to go first and knowing that we may not get a positive return on our investment. But so what? When we talk about God's love for us and his extravagant grace, it's not about us and how good we are. It's just about God's extravagance. So how can we be ambassadors of God's extravagance to the people that we might fail with, that might just relapse, that might decide Jesus is not for them?
Right.
Maybe, but we're not going to help anybody if we don't give it a go.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like they say, rather go out swinging, right?
that's it.
Yeah. To borrow a baseball term, I'd rather go out swinging. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
just aiming for the bleachers than to just let it pass me by.
Yeah.
Yeah, let it pass by. Yeah. Just really quick to kind of finish this off, like I would want to ask, and just kind of maybe you can kind of speak to the listeners. Maybe what would you say to somebody that is trying to find their place, at the church, trying to find their own uniqueness, their own unique voice. I feel like there's like this thing where I think people need to hear, like, almost like they need to receive a word of like release. Like, I'm releasing you to go and to do the work of God. I'm releasing you to go follow your pursuits, follow, those God-given passions in your life, to be fully who God has created you to be, and go out and minister. So you talked about the priesthood of all believers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like what I was telling Anthony before in the previous episode. I'm like, if we all like legit believed and practiced the priesthood of all believers, the world would just be turned upside down. It'd be absolutely like revolutionized.
Yeah.
We would all be out there, ministering, to people constantly. Yeah, consistently. But I feel like people just need to hear a word of like being released to go out and to minister.
Yeah. I think I would tell people you're on purpose. You are on purpose. The things that make you different are on purpose. And I'm not talking about our sin nature or things that we've done that have been hurtful. But as we approach the kingdom of God and we're operating with kindness and integrity, there isn't anything you can't do. And the things that make you different are God's design. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that you're a super creative and you feel like you don't fit in here. It's not an accident that you're incredibly passionate about music or writing or poetry or building cabinets or Excel spreadsheets, whatever the thing you're super into, even if you feel like it doesn't necessarily fit in or you've met a lot of people like you, you're on purpose. That's God's design. Don't feel like you have to be just like everybody else to have a space in God's kingdom. God made you that way on purpose. The things about your personality that are different are on purpose. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of what people might say, of how you might be received. Because all we want is authenticity, right? That's all we want. When we decide who's going to be a good friend, am I going to fit in here? We look for the authentic and the vulnerable. But it's often the thing we want to give last. We look for it first, we take it first, but we give it last. And that doesn't make any sense, right? It leaves everybody wanting. So I would say, if I could release people to be fully who God created them to be, with integrity and kindness, there isn't anything you can't do. You are on purpose, and don't be afraid.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being willing and down to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My prayer is that people just absolutely feel empowered. And as you had mentioned like earlier, like embrace the freedom, embrace the freedom.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So is there anything you want to plug before we sign off on this thing?
Yeah, I think, just Jesus. Chase Jesus hard. And if you've been going to church for a long time, that's great. But I think if I could plug anything is how is your soul? Check your soul right now, brothers and sisters. Make sure that you are walking in tandem with Jesus. And God has given me opportunities to do a lot of cool things in this world, but nothing is as important as making sure people are walking with Jesus. For real. Not just out of habit, but for real.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. All right. See you guys.